It's towards the end of the first week of the election campaign, and I've just dropped off at home very briefly in between interstate trips. Just got home from Adelaide early today, and I'm off to Sydney this afternoon. The campaign's already got that feeling of frenetic chaos about it, and it's interesting to see how the internet and digital broadcasting is much more prominent than it was in 2004 as a factor in the election campaign. Things like Facebook, MySpace, YouTube, of course, were barely in existence then, but they're now really prominent in the to and froing of that inevitably involved in the election campaign. And we're seeing really prominent websites like mumble.com, Possum Politics, Poll Bludger, with detailed analysis, commentary that the mainstream media frankly just can't match, and they're obviously having an influence amongst the political cognoscenti. It's also very interesting to see the emergence of Sky News as a really major force in media during the course of this campaign. It looks likely that David Spears will moderate whatever debate occurs between John Howard and Kevin Rudd, and the regular kind of cycle that inevitably is involved in election campaigns has speeded up to a point where semi-instantaneous coverage and rebuttal through Sky News has become central to the strategies of both of the major parties. And the breaking news capacity that Sky News has got, of course, cannot be matched by the traditional mainstream broadcasters. That's a significant development. I, for example, quite by coincidence, happened to be able to watch live John Howard's statement a couple of weeks ago about a referendum to include formal recognition of Indigenous people in Australia's constitution, just because I was at a business function and they had Sky News going and I was able to see it. So it's a very interesting change that I think we're only seeing the early phases of in this election. It's been much heralded for some years, but there's no question that the flavour, the structure of this election campaign has really shifted from where it was 3 years ago, and that the internet and digital technologies are rapidly increasing in influence. And if I were running a mainstream traditional media company, I'd be pretty worried about that. The ground is shifting. It's putting much more pressure on politicians. We have to respond much more quickly, and the instant rebuttal inevitably gives rise to greater risk of making mistakes. But I think in overall terms that's good for democracy. There's a greater capacity for people to get information, to participate in debate, to argue and to scrutinise people like me.